It's the agency responsible for protecting workers.
Workers are sick, they're dying.
But that agency's been mostly absent when it's needed the most.
OSHA wasn't inspecting until after the workers died.
During the pandemic, Fox 13 investigates Unsafe on the Job, tonight at 9.
Good afternoon. I'm David Wells with the Fox 13 web team, here today with investigative reporter Nate Carlisle to talk about his piece that airs tonight at 9. You just saw the promo for it called, what's it called again, Nate?
On the Job.
Unsafe on the Job, yes. Okay, so it's an investigation into OSHA and the thousands of complaints filed to OSHA that never get investigated. Nate, can you tell me why are you looking at OSHA on a national level?
OSHA, I think a lot of people have heard of it, but maybe don't have experience with it. It is the federal agency responsible for keeping all of us safe, whatever kind of job we have. OSHA covers us. And last month, the investigative team at Fox 13 looked at Utah's OSHA office. Utah operates its own OSHA office, and I'll explain the difference in a moment. But after we looked at what we found in Utah, we got to wondering what was going on across the country. And so we worked with some partners. Fox 13's owned by a company called Scripps with stations all over the country. They also own Newsy, the cable news network that a lot of you probably have. It's just a couple of years old, especially if you have Comcast, you probably have it in your home. And we worked with them to take a look at OSHA nationwide. Great.
So when you go about working on a piece like this, what goes into it? How many hours do you spend investigating something like this?
I've been working on this off and on for a couple of weeks. One of the benefits here in the 21st century is all the data is at our fingertips. So we went looking on OSHA's website for the data it publishes. You said complaints are investigated. OSHA would say that's not true. That every complaint is investigated. It's just a matter of whether a complaint gets an inspection. There's a difference.
That's what I meant. Yes. Thank you for correcting me on that.
And OSHA, and we'll talk about this in the piece, but roughly only about 4.3% of complaints, pandemic-related complaints, are receiving an inspection at this point. And we'll talk about why some of that is and what OSHA has to say about it.
Okay, great. So this year, I imagine most OSHA complaints are related to COVID-19. Do you think that's the case?
But I don't know about you say most complaints. Yeah, that's probably correct. I mean, OSHA is still having to do all the things it used to do too, make sure construction workers are wearing hard hats, make sure that, machinery has guard arms or safety arms and stuff like that. But pandemic complaints are taking up a big chunk of what OSHA is hearing from workers these days. But one of the things we looked at was not just the pandemic complaints, but how OSHA is performing even aside from the pandemic. And there are stats on that too. And in short, we found that OSHA is not performing as many inspections of any kind or all kinds, I should say, as they were at the same period in 2019.
Okay, great. Given that all these complaints that OSHA receives, with thousands of them never getting an inspection rather, what motivation do you think people might have to file a complaint at this point?
Well, the OSHA offices, be it the federal office or if your state like Utah has its own OSHA office, they would tell you they still want you to keep filing complaints. If you see something unsafe on the job, let OSHA know. And that can be, if you're talking about the pandemic, lack of personal protective equipment or lack of sanitary supplies to wash your hands. Social distancing could be a valid reason to go ahead and file a complaint. But OSHA says that, even if it doesn't necessarily get an inspection, even if it doesn't necessarily lead to a fine or something like that, they still want to know about it and catalog it. Sometimes trends are important. So, theoretically, if OSHA sees they're getting a lot of complaints about, lack of soap in restrooms, they can file that away and kind of maybe come up with, programming later on to raise awareness about those issues.
Okay. I put up the number here for people watching in case you do have a complaint about your own workplace, 1-800-321-OSHA. Nate, can you talk a little bit about what kind of investigations you've done about OSHA pre-pandemic?
Well, I've never investigated OSHA specifically before the pandemic, but I'll tell you how I got to know OSHA a little bit some years ago. Before I came to Fox 13, I was covering polygamy at the Salt Lake Tribune, and I actually relied on OSHA to help me track down some construction companies that were affiliated with the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and sending some of their profits and payrolls to that church. OSHA's, one of its biggest roles is making sure construction workers are safe. That eats up a lot of OSHA's resources, and so a lot of job sites, construction sites, get OSHA inspections, and through OSHA, I got to some documents and be able to track some of these construction companies. It wasn't OSHA itself I was investigating, but I got to know the agency a little bit through covering polygamy.
Cool. I was hoping some people would comment, give us a little something, any experiences they've had with OSHA, or let's see, Lori Helm says, been at a company for 5, yes, I think she means years, with no inspection. Maybe, Lori, you can tell us a little bit about what you wanted the inspection for. Let's see, Jesse Siskar says, I hope they took a hard look at Nevada and how the governor ordered OSHA to be his hitmen on small business. Okay. Let's see. Brandy Alvarez says someone should tell Fox 13 that Beaver County Jail is currently having an outbreak and they're trying to keep it hidden. Okay, thanks, Brandy. Let's see, just looking at some of your other comments here. Jack J. Robert, every claim should get checked out so all areas are covered at least one time, not harass them, but updated. And finally, Kristen says, I work in a retail grocery store and I feel the need to sanitize more. So if you have any complaints for OSHA, again, I'll put up that number for you, 1-800-321-OSHA. Let them know if you have concerns about anything safety-wise with your workplace, because they take that seriously. They need to investigate that.
David, if I address a couple of those, what the lady said about her workplace not sanitizing enough. OSHA publishes its complaints, and when you look at the pandemic complaints, that's one that comes up a lot. That my workplace is not cleaning or sanitizing enough, and they're letting OSHA know about that. And that is something OSHA has the powers to address. Someone else said, I think Ms. Helm said she's been a job for 5 years with no OSHA inspections. I don't know where she works, but most of OSHA's inspections are complaint driven. So I don't know in that case whether anyone's ever complained to OSHA, but OSHA doesn't do much in the way of like proactive inspections. It typically takes someone getting hurt or dying or OSHA receiving a complaint to go inspect something. So if Ms. Helm has a concern about that workplace, she's one that needs to call that number or go to OSHA's website and file a complaint. There was also a gentleman there talking about Nevada, and I think Nevada is probably one of the states with its own OSHA office. So let's talk about that. That there's nationwide OSHA, but then the federal agency, but then the states have the option of creating their own OSHA offices, basically. The catch is that those OSHA offices at the state level have to answer to the federal government. They have to have the same standards as federal OSHA. Enforce the same workplace standards. And they have to report all their data to the federal office. So, workers, in Utah with its own OSHA office versus Florida, which does not have its own OSHA office, theoretically shouldn't know the difference between the two because the same standards are getting enforced. The states, though, have the option of creating standards even stricter than what the federal government has. And a few states have done that. I don't know about Nevada, but we talk about this in the piece. Some of the states that have created those, Virginia's one, Michigan's one, California's one. Utah has not created any standards specific for the pandemic or any pandemic standards beyond what the federal government enforces at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to take one last look at the comments, see if we have anything new. Otherwise, we'll show you that promo for tonight's piece. You can watch that tonight at 9. We're excited to see that. So let's see. Don't think anyone else is really talking about OSHA. So thanks for hopping on to preview this for us, Nate. We'll show you that promo one more time.
Thank you, David. See you tonight.
Let's see. Here it is.
It's the agency responsible for protecting workers.
Workers are sick, they're dying.
But that agency's been mostly absent when it's needed the most.
OSHA wasn't inspecting until after the workers died.
During the pandemic, Fox 13 investigates Unsafe on the Job, tonight at 9.